Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Hei Huang. I'm a researcher for MOBI Research Center in the Free University of Brussels. My topic today is the multi-actor, multi-criteria analysis for mass participation decision-making. MOBI Research Center focuses on supporting and studying the transition towards a more sustainable mobility and logistics system. The multi-actor, multi-criteria analysis (MAMCA) is an essential decision-making methodology for supporting sustainable mobility. It is a multi-criteria decision-making methodology which allows for the inclusion of multiple stakeholders. Stakeholders are the people who have an interest, financial or otherwise, in the consequence of any decision taking. Here is the structure of the MAMCA. It is clear to say that MAMCA involves the concept of stakeholder, in contrast to many multi-criteria analyses. Stakeholders can have different criteria traits in MAMCA with their own preferences. In considering the perspectives and interests of different stakeholders, it is easier to find a solution which satisfies their needs and concerns. After the methodology was introduced for more than 20 years, it was found that normally there is a need for more than one stakeholder to represent their interest party. More stakeholders are invited in the workshop for the evaluation. It could be foreseen that the MAMCA evaluation is not satisfied with only one representative for each group. That is, the concept of the stakeholder moved to a stakeholder group, as it is hard for only one stakeholder to represent the whole interest and preference of the group. Multiple stakeholders can be invited for the evaluation of their stakeholder group. Stakeholders within one group already negotiate, but there is still a bit of struggle with loud and quiet people. They may share the same criteria, yet they can hold different priorities. To better adapt the concept of stakeholder group involvement and to better facilitate the workshop, the standard MAMCA participation framework was introduced. The decision makers and the stakeholders have different tasks on each MAMCA steps. And in the workshop, the decision makers can coordinate stakeholders, for example, in weight allocation and alternative evaluation. Stakeholders can also provide feedback to decision makers, such as proposing a possible missed criterion for the stakeholder group. Still, for some stakeholder groups, this participation framework is not well suited, especially when there are stakeholder groups like citizens. This kind of group could have a massive amount of stakeholders. It is important to collect more profiles from the group. The opinions from the group need to be heard as much as possible, as it is considered a way to reduce uncertainty and to improve the democratic legitimacy of those processes. Because the stakeholders in the group normally have different socioeconomic statuses, the different voices need to be heard instead of only represented by one or limited amount during the evaluation. On the other hand, such stakeholders are hard to reach, especially under the pandemic. Offline workshop is not possible anymore. Therefore, the MAMCA mass participation framework is proposed. In such a way, the stakeholders and the decision maker can work independently. The stakeholders can weigh the criteria and evaluate the alternatives under the assistance of the survey to instruction, without guidance from the decision maker, unlike the standard MAMCA participation framework, where the stakeholders have to participate in a physical or online workshop. In order to apply the MAMCA mass participation framework in practice, a survey tool is developed in the MAMCA software. Dedicated pages for the survey tool are built, called MAMCA survey tool pages. Each MAMCA project has individual survey setting pages, and the decision maker can publish the surveys dedicated to different stakeholder groups, in which different survey questions can be asked. Also, the decision maker has an option to ask stakeholders to evaluate alternatives or not, while the weight allocation of criteria is a must. To demonstrate the MAMCA mass participation function, a fictive case entitled the last mile in the supply chain is used. The key point of the evaluation is to be fast, easy to understand, but also mathematically sound. Because of the characteristics of the mass participation stakeholder group, stakeholders are often hard to reach, and they do not take the time to understand the methodology of the calculation, but focus on expressing their preferences and priority. Also, non-technical stakeholders are difficult to understand the mathematical meaning of the evaluation method. An efficient and transparent weight elicitation technique is proposed, which is based on semantic relative importance classes. Stakeholders are required to weigh the criteria based on their priorities. They need to represent relative importances on ordinal score level. The scale is chosen based on the magic number 7 plus or minus 2. By choosing the 5-point Likert scale, the stakeholders can have space of the mind to process the information. In the meantime, the priority ranking has enough level concerns the accuracy of the weight. Plus, the 0 class is added for giving unvanished weight in the judgment. Stakeholders are asked to define relative importance classes in the above-mentioned scale. They need to rank at least one criteria as the most important, as it is never empty. Then, stakeholders weigh the other criteria by comparing the most important criteria. Profile ranking with order statistics evaluation is chosen for alternative evaluation. It is well suitable for mass participation evaluation, as it doesn't consider only the mean distribution values, but also standard deviations. Because the time limit, I won't have a detailed explanation on the evaluation. It is advised not to include the alternative performance indicators as the final evaluation scores of the stakeholder groups. Instead, the global performance indicators of alternatives should be treated as a reference to the stakeholders' preferences. The alternative evaluation requires more objective data and information to support. So the process of the alternative evaluation needs to be executed preferably by the experts. Still, the decision maker can compare the result of the evaluation of experts and the stakeholders' performance indicators for further investigation. When there is a massive amount of stakeholders in one stakeholder group, instead of treating the stakeholder group as a whole all the time, there is a need to look inside the characteristics of individuals. In a stakeholder group like citizens, the priorities and the preferences of stakeholders can vary according to gender, age, income, education, etc. By collecting socioeconomic profiles of the stakeholders, it can provide a broad view of the stakeholder group, which helps the decision maker identify profiles, concerns, and opinions. As the stakeholder groups like citizens, residents is more a general term, it is possible to find a significant difference statistically of the criteria priority ranking or alternatives evaluation. In that case, the stakeholders can be regrouped or divided into subgroups. In the future, we will have an in-depth discussion of the post-process after gathering the survey. A dedicated work will be done to discuss when and how to cluster the stakeholder group based on the collected information. In conclusion, to involve more stakeholders and hear the voice from them, a MAMCA survey framework for the mass participation is designed. We developed a survey tool which is built in MAMCA software. The survey tool can explore more detail within one single stakeholder group and maximize the participation involvement. The decision maker is able to find the homogeneity and heterogeneity within the stakeholder group. You can visit our website www.mamca.be for more information. Thanks for listening.